Hyundai's high-performance N division has only been around for a few years, but in that short time frame, they've already introduced some pretty impressive vehicles like the Veloster N, Elantra N, and of course the Kona N. Now, as you guys know, the industry continues to move toward fully electric vehicles, so for Hyundai's first ever high-performance all-electric car, the company took their excellent Ioniq5 and created this. This is the 2025 Ioniq5N. What it does here is essentially gives the Ioniq5 a track-capable suspension, about twice the power underneath the hood from its dual electric motors, and it also is appealing to the traditional enthusiasts because this car has the ability to simulate the sounds and feels that you get from the Elantra N with its dual clutch transmission. So as you can see today, we finally have gotten a hold of the Ioniq5N for a full week, so we're going to put it through our usual battery of tests at the end of this video. The big question I want to answer: has Hyundai managed to successfully create an electric hot hatch with German vibes? Stay tuned to find out. So ever since Hyundai first introduced the Ioniq5, I've been super excited for a high-performance variant from their N division. So before we start talking about the exterior styling changes, let's go ahead and pop the hood and show you guys what's underneath here. Now, in the regular Ioniq5, this is where Hyundai used to offer like a 0.85 cubic foot frunk. As you can see, they have removed that for the N version because instead there's just this big plastic shroud here that says N, of course their N logo, but what you're essentially going to find here are motors that have been significantly uprated, as well as the lithium-ion battery pack, because in the Ioniq5N, this vehicle uses an 84 kilowatt-hour battery pack as standard. That's up from the 77.4. I imagine this battery pack may eventually make its way into the revised version of the Ioniq5N, of the regular Ioniq5, I'm sorry. But in terms of the power output, the front motor here delivers around 235 horsepower. The rear motor at the back, remember this vehicle comes with all-wheel drive, delivers around 406 horsepower. Combined, Hyundai says you have a total of 601 horsepower. If you push the overboost function in the steering wheel, which allows for 10 seconds of overboost, it'll up the power to 641 horsepower and 568 pound-feet of torque. That's right, we're talking about a Hyundai that has over 640 horsepower. What a world that we live in. This also makes it the most powerful production car that Hyundai has ever produced. It all goes out through a one-speed reduction gear transmission. And Hyundai says with launch control and the most aggressive drive mode, this vehicle should be able to accelerate to 60 in just 3.1 seconds. That's right, just over 3 seconds in a Hyundai, an electric Hyundai hot hatch, which really shows you the incredible performance that this car gives you. It also has a really lofty top speed. Hyundai says this vehicle will cruise at up to 163 miles an hour. So again, some serious numbers here. And in terms of the range, Hyundai says this model should be able to do around 221 miles of range on a full charge. Remember, all of the bigger wheels and tires, the higher performance motors, that's going to, of course, reduce the range. We'll talk about that when we go into the actual driving scene. This vehicle isn't rated to tow, so the regular Ioniq5 can tow like 2,700 pounds. This, however, is not recommended. And as this car sits, it weighs in at just over 4,800 pounds. In total, the Ioniq5N is about 150 pounds heavier versus an Ioniq5 dual motor limited trim. So not that much heavier, but still pretty heavy. This is a 5,000 pound beast. But closing up the hood, let's go ahead and talk about the exterior styling of the Ioniq5N. First of all, the very much futuristic design meets retro vibes works very well on the N version. You can see the front fascia is entirely unique for the N model. You can see it has the orange line here along with these actual functional openings here. These actually allow for air to come in to cool, of course, the battery pack, the electric motor. There's also some active grille shutters down here. There's a lot more larger air openings over here. The digital pixel style full LED headlights also are a little bit darkened. You can see they have a really beautiful light signature with an LED daytime running light, LED low and high beams. No fog lights on this vehicle, but I really appreciate the Atlas white color with the kind of orange accents, the gloss black, the integrated parking sensors, the cameras that's mounted right there front and center along with the black Hyundai logo. It just makes for a much more aggressive but still futuristic and slightly boy racer looks. In fact, if you guys are looking for, again, like a replacement for your Volkswagen Golf R or Mercedes AMG A45, this could very much be it because, again, it to me looks more like a hot hatch as opposed to an SUV. Now, in terms of the width, Hyundai says that they've made this car about 2 inches wider. It's also been lengthened in the overall length because of the more aggressive front and rear body kit at around 185.6 inches long. It's around 3 inches longer versus the regular Ioniq. but around 76.4 inches wide, so 2 inches wider. It still rides on a really long 118-inch wheelbase. So that's what contributes to this vehicle having a very nice stance along with a lot of interior space. You can see most of the width comes from these bulging wheel arches, which I love how Hyundai actually made the car wider to accommodate these massive wheels. So you can see these are a 21-inch multi-spoke wheel, which kind of almost has like an aerodynamic look to it. It's like a very intricate style wheel with a two-tone look to it. It's wrapped on a 275 by 35 ZR21 Pirelli P0 summer tire. So it's a unique summer tire for this vehicle. It also has the biggest production brakes we've ever seen on a Hyundai. 15.2-inch rotors clamped down by a 4-piston fixed monoblock caliper. You can see it's also been orange painted that matches the accents along the vehicle. The suspension itself has been lowered by about a ½ inch. So you have adaptive dampers, independent suspension, and the vehicle's ground clearance is around 5.5 inches versus 6.1 in the standard Ioniq. I also appreciate how this is all body colored as opposed to having a bunch of cladding. And really, the rest of the styling cues here are pretty standard Ioniq 5 stuff. You can see the side mirrors here are black painted. They're also power folding, integrated turn signals and mirrors and whatnot. You can see lots of black accents here to kind of, break up the white. It really just shows off the more aggressive lines of this car. And then you can see here, if you're looking for a sunroof, this is where the Ioniq 5N does not offer a sunroof, which I think is kind of a mistake. I think Hyundai should consider offering it. Some people really like that feature. Remember, this car's platform mate, the Kia EV6 GT, it does have a sunroof that opens, but the Kia EV6 isn't quite as track capable as the Ioniq 5N because, again, Hyundai's N division wanted this thing to be a track monster basically right off the showroom floor. Now, this is where you charge the vehicle. It still has a power operated charge port door, and this is still one of the quickest charging EVs you're going to find. It runs on the 800-volt architecture. It uses the J1772 plug with the CCS combo, and Hyundai says this car can accept up to 235 kilowatts of max DC fast charging, allowing it to go from 10 to 80% in about 18 minutes, or on a level 2, it has a 10.9 kilowatt onboard charger, so you can charge it up in about 7.5 to 8 hours. So again, pretty standard stuff, but you're going to be charging a little bit more often because, remember, 221 miles of range versus like 270 that you get in the standard Ioniq. And then looking at the rear of the vehicle, you can see this really, to me, looks so much like a hot hatch. Love the digital pixel style for the full LED taillights. I also love the blacked out badging. Hyundai did add, again, a rear window wiper back here, which is a nice touch. And then the rear spoiler is a little bit more aggressive. It has a really funky triangular shape for the third brake light as well. No digital camera rearview mirror. I kind of wish that Hyundai would offer that feature. But you can see down here, again, the rear diffuser, far more aggressive. Especially with this area that kind of protrudes out. That's, again, adding to that 3 inches of additional length. You can see there's more of these pixels and squares and rectangles, echoed from here down here into the lower fascia. You have integrated parking sensors, cameras throughout. And then in terms of the cargo area, this is where the Ioniq 5, again, is a super practical vehicle. And the N version is no exception. You have around 26 cubic feet of storage space back here, which is about the same as the regular Ioniq 5. You can also fold down these seats, which sadly Hyundai doesn't let you do it from here. You have to do it from the actual seat back itself from the door, but it'll expand the cargo to around 59.5 cubic feet of space, which is, again, the same as the regular Ioniq 5. If you look underneath here as well, there's a little bit of underfloor storage, although I will say that the regular one has more of a deeper storage area. I think this has to do with bracing. You can see it still comes with a mobile charger. It has a fix-it-flat kit, so no spare tire and whatnot. This vehicle still has their vehicle to load function, where you can basically use the little contraption they give you and use this car as like a mobile generator if you like, if you go camping. But again, cargo capacity is still ridiculously practical, but you did lose the front trunk that you get from the regular Ioniq 5. So on the outside, Hyundai made a lot of changes to differentiate the N version of the Ioniq 5, and they also kind of did the same thing with the interior. First of all, before I get inside, I hope you guys like a dark interior because this is your only color combination option for now, at least. I'm hoping Hyundai will offer a lighter color option, but you essentially get this combination of a black interior with the Alcantara. It's a Syntex, which is a faux leather material, but you can also see the front seats are these Sport Recaro style bucket seats. And these seats, we've seen these seats before in other Hyundai N products. It also has an illuminated N logo here, which is very BMW-esque. Remember, Albert Biermann used to be at BMW. He is now the head of Hyundai's N division, of course. But these seats, very aggressively bolstered. They adjust in 6 different ways. They're manual, sadly, but they are still heated and ventilated. So unlike the seats in the Kia EV6 GT, which are only heated, these still retain their ventilation function, which I really appreciate in the hot summer days. But getting inside the vehicle, you can see the step-in height feels so much more like a hot hatch because it's a ½ inch lower. As I get an inch out the door, The door has a nice solid sounding thunk, which adds to that impression of quality. Now here's the key fob for the vehicle. You can see it's that newer egg style key that Hyundai first introduced on the Ioniq 6. However, you can see it's an all black key. It has your usual buttons here for lock, unlock, remote start, and panic. And then there's also a power liftgate function. No smart park feature like you get in the other Ioniq 5 limited trims. And then if you tilt the key on its side, you can see there's a Hyundai logo here. So it's a unique key fob. You can also use your phone as a key in what they call Digital Key 2.0. But turn the vehicle on, you can see it makes that fake engine sound right away. It almost sounds like an idling sound. Now you can turn that on and off if you prefer, but I actually like it. It adds to the whole visceral appeal of the car. It reminds you have almost like a special vehicle. But again, it's an EV, so it just kind of whirs to life, and it says ready in the instrument panel. The steering wheel is also unique to the N. I also love the way it looks. It's not a flat bottom design, but I love the performance blue contrast stitching, the perforated leather. This is still a heated wheel, and you have a really nice, N logo here as opposed to the 4 dots in the Morse code that you got in the regular ones. You can see the wheel itself offers a manual tilt telescoping ability with a good amount of adjustability and range. You have paddles here to control the gearing for the fake shifts, or you can also use these as regen paddles. And then there's a ton of buttons here. So there's like a drive mode button here. NGB stands for N Grid Boost. That's the overboost function. And then there's 2 customizable N buttons here. This will essentially switch you into the N mode, which gives you the most aggressive setting. You can also go into a custom setting. And then you can also push this button here, which activates the N shift mode. So that automatically turns that into a tachometer. And then so that is one of the reasons why people are going to just go crazy for this car, especially if you've never experienced an EV that can create those kind of fake sounds. And we'll talk about that later on in the driving scene. Now, the first thing I want to talk about as well is the door panels. You can see the door panels themselves have like a soft touch injection molded plastic with this kind of performance blue stitching. It is slightly padded, but I will say it's a little bit basic looking. The materials don't feel the nicest as well, but at least it's nice and padded over here where you'd rest your elbows. You can see there's more of those dots or squares here in the lower portion. Window controls, they have a high quality feel to them. They're one touch up down for the front, but sadly not for the rear. The rear is not one touch. I kind of wish Hyundai had made one touch for all 4. The steering wheel also has a decent sound to the horn when you push the horn button, although it actually does sound a little tinny. Although there are times where I thought it sounded okay, but then sometimes I thought it belonged more in like a Hyundai Kona, for example, but that's a little small change that people can make. You can see the instrument panel looks pretty much identical. First of all, it's very dark in here, but you do have 2 12.3-inch displays. So you have a 12.3-inch display in the instrument panel, and then a 12.3-inch center display here, which has their latest infotainment system. It also includes wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I believe this is the first Ioniq 5 to get wireless. I think for 2025, the refreshed version should all be getting the wireless functionality, which is, a very appreciated touch. You can see the upper dashboard material here is also the same from the door panels. It's kind of carried over here with the contrast stitching. There's more of that contrast performance blue accenting the dash. Down here, you can see it's hard touch plastic along with this area over here. Over here, you can see you still have your dual zone automatic climate control. I appreciate the fact that Hyundai gives you hard buttons and knobs. You can see there's a volume knob here, a tuning knob, your climate function is over here. If you want to access your heated and ventilated seats, you have to first tap this. That brings it up here. You can pull up the cooled seat over here. I don't like how it's 2 separate steps, but at least I appreciate how it still comes with ventilated seats. You also find this in something like the Tesla Model 3 and Model Y, for example. There's also an EV function here where it'll show you, your closest charger. You can also plan your charging, show the efficiency, the usage. You can also adjust how the vehicle is going to charge, and you can go into your settings here. One of the more interesting pages, however, is going to be the N mode. So you can see when you pull that up, that's unique to this car. This is where you can literally access all the different toys that the N, the mad scientists at N give you. You can see there's an N torque distribution where it'll allow you to kind of allow the car to kind of give you more torque to the outside wheel. There's also an N pedal as well. So if I go here, I can go to the performance options. There's an launch control where you can change the grip levels and activate it. You can go to the NE shift. That's where it basically allows me to do that with the fake sounds. This is the N active sound. You can see there's ignition, there's evolution, which evolution is supposed to sound like the future sound of electric N. I actually think sounds pretty cool. There's also supersonic, which is supposed to sound like a fighter jet. So let me know in the comment section below. I'd be curious to know which sound you guys like. Me personally, I either want to turn it off or go with the ignition because of those pops and crackles you get from the rear speakers. There's also a battery preconditioning, an N pedal, a drift optimizer, a race mode where you can go into like a sprint and endurance if you guys are planning to track the vehicle, and then there's your N torque distribution. So lots of customization. This is where it's very much reminding me of like BMW M, because they really wanted to kind of sweat those details. You can tell this car was designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. So that's something that I really appreciate about this car, because it's essentially track capable. You can see it even has tracks already loaded up in the GPS here in the head unit, so you can essentially record your lap times, which is again super cool. I already took this car out to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. It is a phenomenally excellent track car right out of the box, so I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that. Your transmission selector is located over here. You can see if I twist it back toward me, it puts it into reverse. There's your full 360 camera, which is standard. It gives you trajectory, parking sensors, automatic emergency braking. You can also click that and go into a 360 perimeter scan. That color doesn't match the color of the car, but I think it's really impressive how the graphics and resolution are among the best that you're going to find in the segment. The GPS is also built in. It also will do route planning and charging as well. If you guys put in a destination, it'll direct you to all the chargers. It'll tell you how long it needs to stop. So that's something Hyundai has added most recently to their newest crop of EVs, which I appreciate. This center console here is also exclusive to the N. You can see it's fixed into position. There's a padded area here. If you guys are track driving, you can kind of rest or jam your knee against this to kind of hold you in place. There's a nice big wireless phone charging pad here. I also appreciate how it's raised up so the phone doesn't overheat when it's sitting there charging. You can see there's also 2 USB charging ports. You can also adjust that to either connect it via USB for CarPlay, or you can just have it to charge. Push that button, you can see that brings up the camera again. Parking sensors, you have another USB here, 12-volt power outlet here, and then you can see this center console area is fairly large, although it's not much in terms of coverage storage, which I would have preferred to see more coverage storage. You can see, I like the fact that you can kind of tuck these cup holders away and create one big storage area, and then push that, the cup holders pop back out. This is slightly padded. It's covered in like a leatherette material, and if I open this up, you can see it's a little bit shallow, but it does give you still a nice area where you can store a few things and, you know, cover it up under a lid, which is also nice. The headroom above me, you can see there's plentiful amounts of headroom because of the extra height this car gives you versus like the Ioniq 6, but I would still prefer to see Hyundai do like a sunroof to give you that option, because I think a sunroof would really help brighten up this interior, which I think it definitely needs. The glove compartment, you can see it's huge. It goes deep into the actual dashboard. The lid is damped but not lined with felt. And if you guys are an audiophile, this car comes with the upgraded Bose premium sound system, which sounds pretty decent. Not quite as nice as some of the sound systems I've heard from like the, you know, Tesla models, but I think it was necessary. I think Hyundai also may have tuned the audio system differently in this model to again give you the fake sounds, which adds to the whole visceral drama. But overall, the interior, while it may not feel super luxurious, it does have all the modern tech features that you could want. Love the fact that it still has cooled seats, but I think what Hyundai needs to add is just add power seats and an available sunroof for people who may want those features. So moving on to the back seat of the Ioniq 5N, if you guys are planning to sell this vehicle to your spouse, this is where things may play into your favor. Because of that really long wheelbase, you have a ton of space and flexibility in this back seat. Now, first of all, the seat itself allows you to basically move it forward and back, so you can increase or decrease the legroom. You can also obviously fold the seat down, which creates a near flat floor. It's still slightly elevated, but you could, you know, put a bed back here and try to sleep if you go camping. And you also can see there's the ability to recline the seat as well. It actually reclines a fairly large amount, so you could again get comfortable back here on a longer trip, which is great if you guys plan to use this as a family vehicle. Now, getting inside, you can see the step-in is pretty low, but once I get back here, Hyundai says there's 39.5 inches of legroom back here, which basically puts it near the top of the class. I also love the fact that there's good foot space, a completely flat floor here, which is nice, and you also have 2 USB-C charging ports. There's more of that textured like cube or pixel look that you see down here. And then unlike the Ioniq 5 Limited, you can see there's no actual power outlet back here, which they give you in the standard one. I don't know why Hyundai removed it, but they did so, as you can see on the N version of this car. You do have rear seat air vents. They're located here on the actual pillars. And then in terms of the materials, you can see it's still a soft touch injection molded plastic, no contrast blue stitching that's located down here, where this is nice and padded with the same fake leather. There's no retractable manual shades. You get that in the Limited trim, not in this trim. And Hyundai also removed the heated back seats that you find in the Limited trim. Now, you do get those features and the sunroof on the EV6 GT. Remember, this car's platform mate But I guess Hyundai's N division said that it added weight. It didn't really need those features. If I fold this down, you can see there's a cup holder here with 2 armrests. And then in terms of the headroom space, there's plenty of headroom in here. So if you actually want to use this as a family vehicle, this is where the Ioniq 5N really does feel like a grown-up hot hatch. I mean, the company still likes to call this an SUV, but to me, it just seems more like a big hot hatch, and it's definitely going to feel like that when you get it out on the road. So here we are back behind the wheel of the first ever N performance vehicle that also happens to be fully electric, and it's also the most powerful production Hyundai ever made, with up to 641 horsepower when you're using the N Grin Boost or when you have it in the launch control specification. So again, either one is going to unlock the full 641 horsepower. When you don't have it in either of those modes, this thing is still making 601 horsepower. When I first had a chance to drive this vehicle out in Laguna Seca on a racetrack, I was simply blown away. But now that I have the car for a full week, the one thing I want to find out is if that was just a, holiday love affair that I was having with the car, because again, I mostly drove it on a track, had a chance to drive it out on the road. But now that we're getting a full week with the Ioniq 5N, I'm super excited to show you guys if I still absolutely love this thing after spending a little more time with it. Now, the first thing that I do want to show off, of course, is the 0 to 60 performance. When I had a first chance to drive this vehicle out in California, the quickest time I got was 3.1 seconds. And again, that makes it among the quickest accelerating EVs you're going to buy, especially for this price point. To get the quickest acceleration, you have to basically put it in N mode by pushing this button here. And you don't want to have the E shift on, because that's going to lower the 0 to 60 time with the fake shifting. In this mode, I have it in the ignition sound profile, so it sounds like an internal combustion engine. It even makes like the sound of an engine revving. It's supposed to replicate a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder with a DCT from the Elantra N. And let's go ahead and see what we can get here. I've got the battery at 91% state of charge, so we're almost fully charged. To activate the launch control, you basically just come to a stop here, push this little button here, and then just brake torque it. Oh! Tunnel vision! Oh! 3.06 seconds there, 3.06. That's absolutely insane. The fact that we can buy a $66,000 Hyundai that'll do 0 to 60 and smoke a lot of supercars on the road. I mean, that time makes it among the quickest accelerating EVs that I've tested, especially for the money. But it is not quite as fast as one pesky little EV, and that's the new revised Model 3 Performance, which I also had a chance to just drive. If you haven't seen that video, be sure to click on the link in the description below. You can watch it. We're also planning to do a comparison test between the two vehicles as well. But still, that is a lot to be proud of from Hyundai. So I give them applause, obviously, for that. But you know what? Let's try a 0 to 60 time here with the E shift on and see if that makes a little bit of a difference. So we'll turn on the NGB boosting, which actually turns off the shifting. So we'll actually turn that off. We'll just floor it here from a stop and see what we get. I love how it even has the pops and the bangs on overboost when it shifts. 3.6 seconds there with it in the E shift mode. So it slows the 0 to 60 time by about a half a second, which isn't ideal if you want the quickest performance, but listen to this, guys. It even has the pops and the bangs. And you actually hear it coming from the rear speaker. Hyundai also allows the sound to be coming out from the outside of the car, although it's definitely not going to be as loud as from the inside. And you can also bang off the limiter like an actual gas car. And that's, again, what gives this thing the visceral, pleasure that I love with internal combustion engines. Obviously, it's fake, but who cares if it's fake? I actually think it's really fun. It's also done really well. So I applaud the Hyundai, the mad scientists at the Hyundai N division for actually doing this. Now, of course, some would argue, would you actually use this on an everyday basis? That's really going to depend on you. If you love this kind of feeling and you're okay with a slower to 0 to 60 time, that will definitely sway anyone to thinking, you know what, maybe I would use this on a regular basis. Why not? I mean, it's basically the same as driving your internal combustion car. It even has the actual shift shock feel, which is shocking to me that they were able to tune that in a vehicle like this. And you can also pull the paddle wheel, go back into its, normal automatic mode. So again, there's plenty of different modes to drive this thing in. That's just absolutely stupid fun. Stupid fun. I absolutely love it. And it's gonna make, of course, the pops and bangs when you're in the N mode. That's what you have to put it in to get all of that. So what about a 0 to 60 time if you have it in just sport mode here? So I'm gonna turn off the E shifting. I'm also not gonna launch control it. I'm just gonna do the brake, or I'm just gonna do the overboost feature to give us the full power. Let's see if there's a difference here. Freaking hell. 3.18 seconds there. So when you use the launch control in the N mode, it's gonna give you a 0.12 second improvement in the time, which again isn't much. So basically anytime you just stomp on the gas, this thing's going to deliver 0 to 60 in the low 3-second range. You have to use the launch control feature to give you the full, like, basically 3 seconds. And Hyundai claims 3.1 seconds. So, you know, that time is pretty much bang on in real world numbers, which is just absolutely crazy. Again, you can kind of drive this vehicle in this mode in sport all the time. You can also go into an eco mode. In eco mode, just like other Hyundais, you definitely notice it's not as fast. It's not delivering the full power. It almost feels like it's towing something. And put it in normal mode, it kind of is a little slow to ramp up the power. You have to go into the sport or the N mode, and that's where it's gonna give you full power basically right off the line. I will say, the front literally lifts up. I will say that the Model 3 Performance that I last drove, it definitely felt a little quicker off the line. It's almost like Hyundai's still kind of limiting you on the power there, at least initially. Especially when you're launching the car, that's something to, you know, keep in mind. There's something about this car that still feels like it's being held back. Now, some of you are probably wondering, what does the other sound profile sound like? So we'll go over to Evolution. In this mode here, this is supposed to sound like the future of electric vehicle sounds. We'll go into this mode so you can hear all of it. I really like this sound too, actually. It's very interesting. Man, it's so quick to actually create those fake downshifts that I find myself just downshifting all the time. And then of course there's supersonic, which is supposed to sound like a fighter jet. When you use this mode, you guys heard it actually will make those bang explosions when you upshift, which is kind of funny. And you know what? I actually want to try another quick 0 to 60 here. And this time we're gonna leave it in its N mode here. We're just gonna floor it and see what we get with the boost. 3.19. So again, pretty consistent time. That's on a pretty flat surface as well. This thing is just absolutely insane. The sad thing is it's not the quickest EV in the segment anymore, at least for the price range. It's because Tesla, the pesky Tesla, had to make it a little faster in their Model 3. But still, this is something that Hyundai should be extremely proud of. And easily, I feel like they could adjust that with some software, give the motors a little more power. It's just absolutely crazy. Now, the one thing I want to talk about as well is the handling dynamics of this car. I'm going to go back to the ignition. Actually, let's turn off the sound entirely. I want to talk about the handling of this vehicle. Now, this has a completely upgraded adaptive suspension. You can see the steering is so quick, responsive, and direct. The suspension also is very stiff. It basically feels like I'm driving a hot hatch. If Volkswagen did a fully electric version of the GTI or Golf R here in America, I feel like it would be like this car. You definitely get a sense that the dampers are in its firmest setting right now because it's a very stiff ride. The seats also, they hold you in place quite nicely, which I think is, you know, important if you're going to be driving this as a daily driver. The cooled seat also works really well. Visibility is also good on the front, the side, the rear of the vehicle. No digital camera rearview mirror. I do wish Hyundai offered a sunroof on this model. They don't, sadly, which I think would make the experience even better. If you want, you can go into an N custom mode, which I've changed the dampers so it's a little bit softer. And it definitely makes a difference. Is it unbearable to drive in N mode? In certain road conditions, it can be unbearable. So that's why if you have it in like its normal or eco setting, this is where it's gonna give you the quietest possible drive. So you can see in this mode, this is basically what you're gonna be able to daily drive it in normal as well. I think it still has a comfortable ride. It's the most comfortable N product that I've driven in terms of daily driving. Is it the most comfortable riding performance EV? No, this is definitely more on the firmer side and in terms of noise, there's a fair amount of road noise coming from these tires. They are definitely on the louder side for these tires, but again, you're gonna be paying for that because they're Fat 275 Pirellis. They're not gonna be the most quiet tires. In terms of the visibility I mentioned earlier is really good. I like the seat comfort as well. On a longer trip, I did notice that the seats themselves, my back started to hurt a little bit. I also wish that Hyundai still threw in the power adjustment for the seats. I think at this price point, it should include the power adjustment for the seats. No heads-up display on this model either, which you don't typically find that in this segment anyways. But this is definitely not the quietest, commuter car. It's going to remind you that you're driving something that's basically capable on a track. And I already, was able to drive this vehicle on track. It really made a huge difference. I also really like in this mode here, it feels like you're driving an EV, a regular EV. Again, no shifting. It has that actual electric motor sound. When you have everything off, you can still hear a little bit of an electric motor sound, but it's still stupid fast. Put it into sport mode. It's even quicker in sport mode. So again, if you don't want to have it in the N mode, you can just have it in sport mode and it's still going to give you all that power that you're pretty much looking for. Now, in terms of the efficiency, this is where the Ioniq 5N obviously is going to be hit here compared to other models of the Ioniq 5, because we do have a larger 84 kilowatt hour battery pack in this model. However, because of the bigger wheels and tires, all of the aerodynamics the car has, Hyundai claims the range, or the EPA is rating the range at 221 miles. Now, on a full charge in eco mode with the AC off, this car's trip computer was showing 243, as high as 243. Remember, this is still one of the quickest charging EVs you're going to find in the segment. In my actual week's worth of testing, when I was testing it in normal mode in a mixture of city and highway driving, I was averaging around 210 to 215 miles of range on a full charge, which is acceptable. This is where the Tesla Model 3 Performance was doing around 270, 275. Again, it's a more aerodynamic vehicle. Although I'd argue it's not quite probably as track capable as this car. And also it's not as practical. It's also significantly lighter. So that's something to keep in mind. This car, by the way, 4,800 pounds. You feel the mass on the track, but here on the street, you don't. This actually feels like one of the best handling and most nimble EVs I've ever driven, kind of on the same line as the Model 3 Performance and of course a Porsche Taycan or a BMW i4. Never get tired of doing that. This is absolutely insane. Oh my God. But again, so the range, while it's in the low 200s in real world, it's still acceptable. If you're looking for, over 300 miles of range, this is where some of the competitors, obviously you want to step down from the performance versions, they're going to get slightly better range versus this car. But overall, I mean, finding your favorite back road, attacking it, pushing the car around corners, it has so much grip. It has so much road feel, so much presence. It has a visceral mechanical, well, fake mechanical feel, but still, the seats hold you in place nicely. There's so much about this thing that screams driver's car. You can tell the Ioniq 5N was built by enthusiasts, for enthusiasts, and it really shines. It shocks me because this is a car company that doesn't have that much prestige in terms of performance. They've been really making a name for themselves recently with end products, but again, they're still not quite up there in terms of, their name. But it really shocks me. This is something that I expected Volkswagen or Audi to do, and they haven't done, especially at this price point. So I have to give Hyundai credit where it's due. And I have to also say that if you're an enthusiast, that wants to try going electric, this car kind of gives you that taste, and you don't necessarily have to give up your fun and your shifting noises and the mechanical feel that you love, because again, you can quickly put it into N mode here, push this little button here, and start revving. I know it's fake, but you know what? If the future is electric and they can create fake noises like this, I'm all for it, because it makes this car have character. And that's been the problem that I've been saying a lot about EVs, is they all pretty much drive the same, but this car has the ability to make it feel like it's a truly unique and special car when you're out on the road. So even though Hyundai's N Performance division may not exactly have the street credibility that you get from like a BMW M, Mercedes-AMG, or even like a Volkswagen GTI or Golf R, I have to say, after spending a week with this model here, remember, this is the most powerful production Hyundai vehicle that the company has ever built, not to mention it's also the first electric N car. This car seriously wowed me. When I first had a chance to drive this vehicle out in Laguna Seca, Northern California, it was very much just a brief taste, and I thought it might just be kind of like a short love affair, like when you're on a holiday. But after spending a week with this car, in terms of it as a daily driver, this is where the Ioniq 5's strengths really come into play. It's ridiculously spacious on the inside. The sport bucket seats are definitely a lot more aggressively bolstered. My recommendation, as always, try the seats out, make sure they're comfortable. I do wish that Hyundai would have included the power seat option at least for these seats. They're still heated and ventilated. The second row is still spacious. The cargo area is spacious. And of course, the performance is insane. 0 to 60 in just over 3 seconds. I mean, this performance is supercar killing. You wouldn't expect a Hyundai, let alone a performance electric Hyundai, to have this kind of power. But really, in this segment of vehicle for the money, there are few cars that can kind of match this car and also match it in terms of practicality. I mean, yes, there are a lot of competitors within this space, but I think Hyundai has something unique here, especially when you factor in those virtual engine sounds. It's not something that I thought I would love on a day-to-day basis, but I found myself using it all the time because it really just tricks your brain into thinking that you have an internal combustion vehicle underneath the hood, but it still gives you that usability of an EV because, again, I don't have to visit gas stations, yet it has the crackles and pops and the overrun features from the fake exhaust noise that it gives you from the speakers. The actual virtual shifting, while it does slow the vehicle down, I think it's going to be worth it, especially if you guys are coming from a performance gas-powered car. This kind of gives you the best of both worlds. And if you're sick and tired of all the fake noises, you can turn all of it off and drive it like a regular EV, like your buddy's, Tesla Model 3 Performance. So there's a lot to like here with the Ioniq 5N. The technology in this car also is, very much improved over the earlier renditions. And while it may not have some of the software that you get from, again, some newer Tesla vehicles, some would argue that they much prefer the traditional feel that the Ioniq 5 gives you, and they essentially just take it to the next level for the N model. The range in this car is definitely lower than what I'd like it to be. I mean, 215-ish miles is what I was getting in my actual real-world testing, but I imagine that for most buyers, that should be enough. If you plan to take road trips, go for the regular Ioniq 5, or you can also check out some of the competition. But really, where the Ioniq 5N starts to fall a little bit flat on its face is when you look at the pricing, because when Hyundai launched this car earlier this year, they announced a starting price at $66,100. 66 grand is a whopping 10 grand more versus like the Ioniq 5 limited dual motor. So that's a pretty hefty increase. Actually, it's more like $12,000 extra. And if you're also comparing it to some of its competitors like the Mustang Mach-E GT, the Model Y and Model 3 Performance, and the Chevrolet Blazer EV, this vehicle is roughly $10,000 to $12,000 more expensive. Its other close cousin, the Kia EV6 GT, that's around $61,000, so Hyundai charges about $5,000 more. I think $68,000 as tested for my particular test car is definitely expensive, and really it wasn't really considered expensive in my mind until I saw the price tag of the new Tesla Model 3 and Model Y Performance in the mid $50,000 range. So you really have to want something like this. You want to have those fake virtual shifting with the crackles and pops. You want that visceral feel because it is definitely unique, but I just find that if Hyundai is going to keep this model competitive, I think they do need to offer a couple of features like power seats and a sunroof, and perhaps think about lowering the price just ever so slightly. If they can get it under the $60K mark, I think it's going to be a great deal and a great alternative to a Tesla Model 3 Performance. But again, you have to be willing to pay that extra 10 grand, and you have to really want the extra features that this car gives you. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2025 Hyundai Ioniq 5N. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.